In medicine, we see it every day, the moment that changes everything. For Sarah Collins, it was 3 simple words: 3 months left. The doctor delivered this news with clinical precision in a sterile hospital room, like it was just another Wednesday. But for Sarah, it was the end. Or so everyone thought. What the medical team didn't know was that something inside her refused to accept that ending, and what happened next shocked even the most experienced physicians. What does a person do when they're told they're running out of time? It all began with a fall. A simple stumble at the grocery store. The kind anyone might have. One moment Sarah was reaching for tomatoes, the next she was on the floor with a sharp pain radiating through her side. At first, she laughed it off. Embarrassed, she waved away the concerned store clerk. "I'm fine," she insisted. But that night, the pain intensified. A dull ache that wouldn't subside. Days passed. Then weeks. She took painkillers and carried on. Until she couldn't anymore. Her daughter Emma found her curled up on the bathroom floor one morning. She couldn't stand. Couldn't breathe without stabbing pain. The ambulance came. Then tests. So many tests. As an oncologist for over 20 years, I've had to deliver devastating news countless times. The scans showed what we most feared: stage 4. Aggressive. Terminal. 6 tumors. Her liver. Her lungs. Her spine. We'd found the source of her fall, a tumor pressing against her vertebrae. The cancer had been silently growing, spreading, consuming her from the inside long before she'd ever felt that first pain. The medical consensus was clear: it had already spread too far. There were no viable treatment options. Just pain management. Just time. She wasn't ready to let go. But who does a person become when their clock starts ticking loudly in their ear? Sarah tried to be brave for Emma. The child was only 9. Too young to lose her mother. Too young to understand why mommy couldn't pick her up anymore or why grandma suddenly moved in. Emma asked if her mother was going to die. Sarah looked into those innocent eyes and lied. She told her no. But inside, she was already mourning the future she'd never get to see: her daughter's graduation, her wedding, those late-night calls asking for grown-up advice. Medical professionals see this every day, the brutal honesty of terminal illness colliding with the human need for hope. As Sarah's oncologist, I watched her start treatments anyway, even though we advised it wouldn't help. Palliative care, we called it. Not to cure, just to buy time. Maybe extend those 3 months to 4. Maybe 5 if she was lucky. She signed the forms. She swallowed the pills that made her vomit until there was nothing left. She shaved her head before the chemo could take it strand by strand. The medical staff observed the transformation: once a vibrant mother with an infectious laugh, now a hollow-eyed patient clutching fragile hope. Every day she fought, but the medical notes indicated some days she didn't want to. Some days the pain was so intense that surrender seemed merciful. The psychological oncologist noted that Sarah would watch Emma playing outside and wonder aloud, maybe it was better to go quickly. Maybe dragging this out was selfish. Then came the first scan after 2 months of treatment. The medical team expected confirmation of what we already knew, that the cancer was winning. But something was different. "One of your tumors," I told her slowly, reviewing the unexpected results, "has decreased in size." It wasn't substantial. 5% reduction in one tumor. The others remained unchanged. But it was something no one on the medical team expected. "Could be a fluke," we said during rounds. "Temporary." But what if it wasn't? That tiny spark changed everything. In my 15 years as an oncologist, I'd seen terminal patients try everything. But Sarah's approach was systematic, almost scientific in its intensity. She devoured medical journals. She joined underground forums where terminal patients shared experimental approaches. She contacted survivors with similar diagnoses, all three of them worldwide. She changed everything. She eliminated sugar, citing studies about how it feeds cancer cells. She eliminated processed foods. She immersed herself in research on inflammation, meditation, and experimental therapies no institution would fund. She began journaling her dreams. She did cold plunges in the river behind her house, shocking her system into fighting. She consulted with spiritual healers that many of her scientific friends dismissed. The oncology team was skeptical. "Don't torture yourself," I advised her gently. "Focus on quality time with your daughter." Maybe she was grasping at straws. But something kept her going when all medical evidence suggested she should be declining. 3 months came. And went. She was still here. Then came another challenge we often see with long-term patients: social isolation. Friends stopped calling. They'd already grieved her. They didn't know how to handle this strange limbo. Was she dying or wasn't she? Her boss called about her replacement. Her ex-husband filed for full custody, just in case. The world was moving on without her while she was fighting to stay in it. Was she chasing miracles, or was something truly changing inside her body? 6 months passed. Then a year. Then 2. Not only was Sarah still alive, but she was healing. Her blood work stunned the lab techs. Her scans baffled the radiologists. One by one, the tumors shrank. First the smallest one in her lung. Then the one on her spine. The liver tumors took longest, stubborn, resistant. As her doctor, I ordered more tests. Different scans. Second opinions. Third opinions. "We must have misdiagnosed you," I suggested. But the original biopsy samples were still there, still showing the same aggressive cancer that should have taken her within months. By year 3, she was in partial remission. The medical staff started calling her the miracle case. We'd point her out to medical students. Her case became the subject of whispered conversations in hospital corridors. But the most shocking revelation wasn't what happened inside her body, it was what we learned about our medical system's limitations. Through Sarah's research and connections with other patients, she discovered a trial for her exact cancer type that had shown promising results. When she asked why she hadn't been offered it, an uncomfortable truth emerged. They formed their own support group. Not to hold hands and wait for the end, but to fight. To share what worked. To push boundaries. As medical professionals, we warned her about false hope. But she countered that hope wasn't false if it kept her alive, kept her fighting. She'd rather die believing in possibility than live accepting limitation. By year 4, something unprecedented happened in my career. I asked if I could write a paper about her case. The same oncologist who had once gently suggested she focus on dying well now wanted to study how she was living. But would this fragile progress hold, or come crashing down as medical statistics suggested it might? From a medical perspective, recovery isn't a straight line. It's a jagged, unpredictable journey of advances and retreats. In year 5, a small spot appeared on Sarah's scan. The waiting room fell silent as she processed this news. After everything, was it back? For 2 weeks, she couldn't sleep. She sat by Emma's bed at night watching her breathe, thinking of all she might miss again. Emma was 14 now, navigating her first crush, experiencing the drama of middle school. Would her mother be here for high school? For her first heartbreak? The biopsy came back. Not cancer, scar tissue. False alarm. But those 2 weeks revealed something profound about survivorship that medical textbooks rarely address: fear never leaves these patients. Not completely. It becomes a shadow companion, sometimes fading in bright moments, but always there in the periphery. Sarah had to make peace with uncertainty. With never knowing for sure if tomorrow the cancer might return. with living on borrowed time that somehow became real time. As her physician, I observed that the hardest part wasn't the physical battle. It was rebuilding a life she'd already mentally abandoned. She'd given away cherished possessions. She'd written letters to Emma for future birthdays. She'd made peace with death. Now she had to make peace with living. Her job had replaced her. Her health insurance had lapsed. Her retirement savings were depleted. She was alive but starting from scratch at 43. In the oncology field, we often notice that when patients survive the unsurvivable, people expect them to be perpetually grateful. To never complain about traffic or taxes or mundane frustrations. But surviving doesn't make a person a saint, it makes them human in the most raw, unfiltered way. Sarah learned to embrace that humanity. To allow herself bad days. To feel anger at what was taken from her, even as she celebrated what was given back. And she realized something powerful that changed how I approach patient care. Every survivor story we hear is sanitized. Packaged into neat before and afters. The messy middle, the doubt, the setbacks, the sheer exhaustion of fighting, gets edited out. She committed to telling the whole truth. Not just the triumph, but the terror. Not just the victory, but the cost. But how does one convince the medical establishment to see beyond statistics and protocols? 6 years to the day after that diagnosis, Sarah walked into our hospital. Not in a wheelchair. Not in tears. She walked, unassisted, alive, glowing, with her now teenage daughter at her side. The same nurse who had taken her vitals 6 years ago dropped her clipboard when she saw her. I stared as if seeing a ghost. She handed me a copy of her latest scan. Clear. Not a trace. In medical circles, we called it an anomaly. A miracle. But Sarah knew better. This wasn't luck. This wasn't divine intervention, though she didn't discount the power of prayer. This was a war. One she fought every single day. Not just against the cancer, but against the fear, the doubt, the medical voices that said you can't. She could. And she did. I invited her to speak to a room full of oncologists. Nervous, she stood before us, the experts, the knowledge keepers, and told us what we didn't want to hear, that sometimes, we're wrong. That statistics aren't destinies. That terminal isn't always the end. Some nodded. Some scribbled notes. Some looked uncomfortable. Change comes slowly to medicine. But one young oncologist approached her afterward with tears in her eyes. I gave someone a 3-month sentence yesterday, she confessed. I'm calling her tomorrow. That's when Sarah found her purpose. This wasn't just about her survival. It was about changing the conversation around terminal illness. About challenging the protocols that determine who gets hope and who gets hospice. She started a foundation. They fund research into outlier cases like hers. They advocate for access to experimental treatments for terminal patients. They connect the hopeless with the hopeful. And they listen to the dying when they say, I'm not ready to go. Because Sarah wasn't. And she stayed. But what does surviving do to a person? Can they ever go back to who they were, before the battle? Sarah still wakes up every morning and checks the mirror, half expecting to see her, the woman who was dying. But that woman is gone. In her place stands someone reborn. Not just physically, though her hair grew back thicker, her skin regained its color, her body strengthened. But spiritually. Emotionally. Fundamentally. As a medical professional who has watched countless patients face mortality, I've observed that near death doesn't just change a person's perspective. It shatters it, then hands them the fragments to build something new. Something truer. Sarah doesn't sweat the small stuff anymore, that cliché is real. But she also doesn't tolerate the big stuff, injustice, cruelty, wasted time, relationships that drain rather than fill. Emma says her mother is intense now. She's right. When you've seen the edge of existence, you don't drift through life anymore. You race through it, arms wide open, heart exposed. Sarah still gets scanned every 6 months. Still holds her breath when the phone rings with results. Still wonders if today might be the day it returns. But fear no longer controls her. Death no longer terrifies her. She's looked it in the face. They've made their acquaintance. And she's politely asked it to wait. She shares her story now, not for sympathy, but for truth. Because somewhere, someone is hearing the same thing she once heard: you have 3 months. And she wants them to know, that's not a sentence. It can be a challenge. A dare. A whisper to rise. We said she wouldn't make it to Christmas. She just celebrated her daughter's 15th birthday. And she danced. Not the cautious shuffle of the sick, but the wild abandon of the truly alive. She danced for those who can't. For those who were told 3 months and got 2. For those fighting their own battles against odds just as impossible. And she dances for herself. For the woman who fell in a grocery store and found out she was dying. For the mother who lied to her daughter about death. For the patient who became a warrior. Because the real miracle isn't just surviving, it's deciding you're not done living. And Sarah isn't. Not by a long shot. As her doctor, I've learned perhaps the most important lesson of my career: medicine isn't just about protocols and probabilities. It's about people who defy them. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please comment which part moves and share it. Your share could reach someone who needs to hear this message today. And remember, statistics aren't destinies. Hope isn't false if it keeps you fighting. Subscribe for more stories that challenge what we think we know about healing, hope, and the human spirit.